So I think Manchester United are targeting the wrong Brentford player. Statistically, tactically and financially, I think Yoane Wissa is a far better option than Mbeumo. In this video I'm going to focus on the statistical and financial side, and in a separate video I'll come on to the tactical side of how he'd fit into Amorim's system. Now obviously I know that Mbeumo and Wissa aren't like for like stylistically, but the point of this video is to show you how massively underrated Wissa is compared with Mbeumo, because Wissa is genuinely competing with the likes of Isaac, Haaland and Salah when it comes to his goal scoring this season, and I'm not even exaggerating, as you'll see in a minute. So first of all, considering one of the main reasons people want to sign Mbeumo for £50 million is because of his goal scoring specifically in the Premier League, then surely you have to consider Wissa as well. In the Premier League this season, he scored the second most non-penalty goals of any player in the league, joint second with Haaland and Isaac behind only Mo Salah, and 4 more than Mbeumo. However, this is where non-penalty XG comes into play. But before I break down that, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfever.co. They've got the new season jerseys and will have the Manchester United shirts when they do come out, but they've also got a variety of retro jerseys as well, such as this Manchester United 2006-2007 white away shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which they did send me alongside this Juventus Zidane shirt from the 1990s. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you will get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. So after my recent analysis video on Mbeumo, people seem to not understand why a substantial overperformance of a player's XG, like the 7.5 we saw with Mbeumo this season, is not sustainable in the mid to long term, season after season. If you want more detail, check out the Mbeumo video, I'll leave it linked in the eye above. But in short, ideally you want to be looking for goal scorers who record high non-penalty XG rates, as this shows they have the ability to get into, but also create high value chances for themselves consistently, which is going to be far more likely to translate into following seasons, compared with players who are scoring from long range, which are considered low probability according to the XG model. But with Yoane Wissa, you can see that his goal scoring doesn't follow the same pattern as Mbeumo or Cunha, as this season he's recorded the second highest non-penalty XG with 18.5, ahead of Mo Salah, and behind only Erling Haaland with 18.8. And that's absurd when you think that Wissa is playing for Brentford, whereas someone like Chris Wood, for example, has overperformed his non-penalty XG by a total of 6 goals, 0.19 per 90, which like with Cunha and Mbeumo is likely not going to be sustainable in the mid to long term. Now Wissa still overperformed his XG, showing how clinical he is, but by a very sustainable 0.02 per 90. Wissa also records the second highest non-penalty XG per shot with 0.21, ahead of Erling Haaland and behind only Richarlison, but he only played just over 800 minutes this season, so really Wissa was the best in the league when it comes to maximising his XG with every shot, and in 23-24 he also ranked highly for this as well, sitting 19th with a slightly lower 0.16 per 90, which comes down to his offensive instincts, anticipation and decisiveness in the box. And so rather than just looking at a player's goals, you need to actually look at their non-penalty XG in order to allow you to gauge how good they actually are at creating those opportunities for themselves, as that particular metric is far more useful over the long run when it comes to judging goal scorers compared with just looking at their goal scoring output, especially if they've massively overperformed their XG in a given season. And this is reflected in the eye test as well, as when you watch Wissa play, he resembles a traditional poacher like Jamie Vardy, Inzaghi or Ruud van Nistelrooy, with his positioning on the shoulder of the last defender, allowing him to constantly look to make these clever sharp movements in behind the back line, which allows him to get into high value 1v1 goal scoring positions. And he's also got a knack of being able to move early when the ball is in a crossing position in order to get goal side of a defender and put himself in a high value goal scoring position to receive the ball. And this is a type of ability inside of the box that Højlund and Xerxes both lack. Whilst Wissa is also comfortable playing wide in either of the two interior forward positions, showing his versatility, but also when he needs to drop off to receive the ball to feet with pressure on his back, with simple short passes in order to keep play circulating, whilst also being fairly good when it comes to turning quickly and driving forward into the space, alongside having excellent defensive discipline in the middle third and also when pressing high up the pitch as well, which all in all gives him a far more complete skill set than either Højlund or Xerxes. Now it is true that like Mbeumo, Wissa's goal scoring numbers have gone up significantly this season, but whereas Mbeumo had a massive swing with his XG conversion, going from underperforming his non-penalty XG by 1.4 goals in the 23-24 season to overperforming it by 7.5 this season, Wissa's is a lot more stable. as despite playing as a wide attacker nearly 30% of the time during the 23-24 season, Wissa not only recorded 12 goals in 34 games, but also a very respectable non-penalty goals rate of 0.43 per 90, and crucially having a similar non-penalty XG sitting in the 56th percentile, only a very slight overperformance. And going back to 22-23, where he played more often as a wide attacker than a centre forward, you can once again see that his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG rate were very impressive when compared to every other winger and attacking midfielder in the league that season, ranking around the 85th percentile for both his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG, with another sustainable XG overperformance. And so you can see that unlike Mbeumo, Wissa has been consistently putting up a high non-penalty XG and sustainably overperforming it in the last few seasons, rather than having a significant jump in goal-scoring output just this season, correlating with a massive XG overperformance. Goal scoring wise, I think Wissa next season, and maybe for the next 2 or 3, given how sustainable his XG looks, could be up there competing with the likes of Haaland, Isaac and Salah for the Golden Boot, especially in a top 5 side, and that's not even factoring in that he doesn't take penalties either, which could further boost his numbers. Now of course, goal scoring is his main asset, but it's certainly not his only, and I'll break down the other parts of his game in the tactical analysis video, also looking at why I think he could potentially play in any of the 3 positions in the front 3. See, I think Wissa is a perfect example of how people base their opinions on players around what they assume a top player should look like aesthetically, hype in the media, how other fans rate them, and how their career has developed up until this point. There's no way that anyone's convincing me that Yoane Wissa is not at least on the same level as Mbeumo in terms of current ability. Wissa is massively underrated simply because he was signed way back in 2021 and only really started to develop significantly as one of their key players in the 23-24 season at the age of 27, and so he simply doesn't suit a lot of people's narratives around how a player's development over their career should look. I mean, the interest around Mbeumo is primarily down to his goal scoring, but I would say in terms of the rest of his game, both statistically and from the eye test, I don't think he's better than Ahmad over the next 1 to 3 seasons if both players are being used in their preferred roles as right wingers in a 4 at the back system, let alone being at or bordering on the elite level, which I think that sort of fee should warrant at his age. And so financially, I just think Wissa is clearly better value for money. He's 28, 29 in September, and so he's only 3 years older than Mbeumo, but given that he only has 1 year left on his Brentford contract and so could be lost on a free as early as January with a pre-contract agreement, and Nottingham Forest were only willing to bid 22 million back in January, I think United should be able to pick him up for around £15 million. And whilst Mbeumo is likely to be on around £9 or £10 million a season, and Wissa at the moment is on just a quarter of what Mbeumo is on at Brentford, realistically Wissa's probably coming in at around £90 to £110,000 a week, which is roughly about £5 to £6 million a year. If we assume that there's probably about a £4 million a season difference between Mbeumo and Wissa's earnings at United, over 5 years that would be £20 million extra for Mbeumo, factoring out bonuses, which combined with the likely £35 to £40 million difference in the transfer fee, with any potential add-ons on top, that would mean that having Mbeumo from 26 to 31 would cost £55 to £60 million more than having Wissa from 29 to 34. And if you look at both players' playing styles, I would argue that Wissa, being a poacher who is far more reliant on his mental attributes than Mbeumo's game is, probably has more longevity at the top level and could play and even improve into his early to mid 30s, as we've seen with players like Chris Wood and Danny Welbeck, especially considering Wissa wouldn't be coming in as a key starter week in week out like Mbeumo would be. If you sign Wissa, then you also have the money to bring in someone like Kang-in Lee for around 30 to 33 million, who I actually think would be a better option than Mbeumo anyway on that right side, and I'm going to make a separate video analysing why I think this, so make sure you subscribe to the channel for that. But the money we're paying for Mbeumo, all things factored in comparison to what players like Wissa and Kang-in Lee would cost, is just ridiculous, and exactly why Manchester United are in the financial position they're in, because both the board and the fan base seem to get far too emotionally invested and attached to certain players, even when the fee gets far too inflated to the point where the fan base has to pretend that this player is an elite level game changer that we need desperately, and anyone who disagrees is a hater, rather than just being objective and not seeing everything as black or white. So let me know what you think of Wissa in the comment section below, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below, and if you want to help support the channel and sign up to the Patreon, you can read read my articles or get access to the in-game Instagram group chat, so I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.